Hey guys, in this lesson, I want to talk about brand names and just branding in general. Now, this is typically a very exciting topic for a lot of new entrepreneurs. It's fun to think of like a new brand name or what you're going to name your company. You do need to take into account some certain considerations that I want to lay out in this particular lesson. I'm by no means a branding expert, but I have made my fair share of mistakes over the years, and I've also done a number of things right, and those are the things I want to teach you guys. So to start off with, let's talk about your Amazon store name, okay? Now your Amazon store name, it's going to show up right here. It's going to say sold by blah, 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 whatever name you decide to choose, and fulfilled by Amazon. Now, the typical customer does not read this. They don't care about it, nor do most people even know that they're purchasing things that aren't sold by Amazon. So this really doesn't matter very much, okay? You can also change it at any time, so don't stress out about this at all. Now, when you're thinking of what name to use here, seriously, if you spend more than 10 minutes on it, you're wasting time. You should be spending it on something else. But a few of the types of names that I like are just things that are very generic and you're not sure what they sell. So this one's called Vinoya. I also just ran across a few others that I kind of liked. This one's decent, like Kitchen Trends. You would kind of expect them to sell kitchen stuff, but they could always change it if they started to sell something else. This one's called IAMBTM Limited. I even think that's fine. This one's called Kabasa. So I think all these are fine. Out of all these, this one's probably my favorite, Vinoya, just because I kind of like the word, but you still don't really know what they sell. Don't spend too much time on it. Just choose something. I would recommend to keep it generic, and just remember you can change it at any time. Now, the actual brand name for your product's a little bit different, and it should require a little bit more thought and time put into it. One of the beautiful things about creating a product based off of the method that I'm talking about here is you are creating a brand, and that brand's going to have a certain value associated with it, even if you're only selling one or two or three of products, okay? When you're thinking about what you want to use for your brand name, I would recommend you to do a little bit of thinking about like, what do you envision your brand evolving into? And I think there's kind of two areas for this. Like one, you could create a brand around a certain style of product. Like you sell computer accessories or you sell baby items or whatever else. This is a method that some people prefer. Me, I don't necessarily favor it, but I also think it's fine. If you choose to go that route, I think good brand names are terms that hint towards that, but they don't necessarily only say that they're selling that. So an example of this is there was this famous Silicon Valley case study because they did a lot of things wrong, but I like their brand name. Their brand name was Juicero, and it was a machine that juiced stuff. Now, Juicero, you could also imagine it selling other types of like health and wellness products, but Juicero was a term that like in your mind you thought like juice or health, but it wasn't directly called like the juicing machine. So I like Juicero quite a bit. Another similar one is actually Jungle Scout. Jungle Scout is like the Amazon jungle, scouting out or finding products, Jungle Scout. So it hints towards what it does, but it's still generic enough that you could tie in some other stuff to it. So that's kind of like option A. And if like you think you're only going to create products in a certain category, I'd probably recommend doing something like that. If you want to just have the option to sell anything, which is what I would recommend, then I would recommend keeping it more generic and choosing words that you essentially just don't know what they mean or what they sell. An example of this is there's this dog food company that I ran across. Like the name of the brand is Ollie. It's like, all right, I would have no idea what Ollie sells. It's like, once you say it's dog food, I could probably associate Ollie with the name of a dog. But if you also told me that it was a women's apparel line, I'd probably just be like, okay. I mean, other examples of that would be like Nike. It's like over time, Nike has built up this brand that we associate with certain things. But if you just gave me the term Nike, I wouldn't know what they sell. Actually, same thing with Amazon. If you just said Amazon, I don't think I would associate it with anything. If I hadn't been affected by like the media and using these types of products. So I would recommend keeping it generic like that. Now, when you're thinking these words, there's a few considerations. One is the trademark, which is very important. To search for the trademark, what I'd recommend is I like this tool called Trademarkia. You can use USPTO.gov, which is the official one, but Trademarkia works pretty well. if we look at like Jungle Snugs, you know, it will tell us that this particular term is registered, right? Whereas if you search for something that isn't registered, jungle, I don't know, something. So this one used to be registered, but it was no longer updated after 2003, so it would now be available. So you can search whatever term you want in there to see if it's available. So I would recommend searching to see if your trademark has already been registered, because I would strongly encourage you to choose a brand that hasn't already been trademarked. Some other considerations when choosing your brand name is to check for domain names and social handles. These are less important because it's more common these days to use like .co domain names or .io. So the .com isn't a must-have, but it's a nice-to-have. And what I like to do for it is I use this website called Name Checker, just R at the end, not ER. And what you can do is you can search for domain names as well as all these social handles. So let's just grab our friends over here, Vanoya. I'm just gonna put it in here and see what's available, what's not. The domain names, the .com domain name's not available. Facebook's not available, Twitter, Tumblr, etc. Some of the other ones are still available, but a lot of them are taken. What you'll find is very, very few words have all of these available and the .com. So like these aren't all must-haves, but it's nice that the .com's available and some of the more popular social platforms. So you can just kind of keep that in mind when you're deciding what you want to choose. The last consideration I recommend you keep in mind when you're thinking of a brand name is preferably it's something that's relatively easy to say or to recommend to a friend. So like I could recommend to my friend like, oh, I like Ollie dog food, and they would probably know how to spell it. Juicero, you could probably get close enough so Google could correct you, but that's kind of like more on the verge. Same thing with like Nike. I'm trying to think like if I've never heard of the term Nike before, would I know how to spell it? I mean, I might try like Nikey or something, but same thing, I could probably get to it. So some of these that are very out there would be fairly difficult to like tell your friend in a recommendation. So I encourage you guys to take that into account. Thinking of these words can be kind of challenging. I recommend like 3 different styles of brand names. These would be like my 3 favorite. I recommend a 2-word combination, a made-up word, or you could call it a mashed-up word. So a 2-word combination, examples of these would be like Snapchat or SoulCycle. Snapchat, you know, is a social platform. SoulCycle is this spinning studio. And there's quite a few successful brands with 2-word combinations like that, okay? So that's one kind of brand name that I actually like quite a bit. Another type that I like are kind of like made-up words. Now, you have to be a little bit more creative here, but you can try to come up with some of these. Examples of made-up words would just be like Google or Skype, right? Like Skype, the video chat app, Skype's just a made-up word, okay? So they're a little bit harder, but they a lot of those can be pretty good. Other ones I like are kind of like mashed up words. So these are like kind of 2 names that like you stick together, like Instacart. Instacart is an app that you use for like on-demand grocery service. You know, it's like instant and like kind of shopping cart. Instacart, you mash those together. And yeah, I think that one works quite well. Or Zillow, the real estate website. Those are the 3 that I prefer, like 2-word combinations, made up words, or mashed up words. And it's quite hard to think of these. So let me give you 2 resources that are both free that I like to use to come up with these. The first one is namemesh.com, and it works pretty well. What you can do is you can type in essentially just a keyword, and it helps you think of different types of words. So, you know, a lot of these are like the mashed up. It doesn't really come up with made up, but it does like mashups, shorts, some ones with different, what are those called? TLDs, TDR, TL, I don't know, whatever they're called. The N, instead of .coms, .win or whatever else. This one works pretty well. I also like this one quite a bit, namestation.com. I like that because it has the ability, like compound words, that's equivalent to what I was calling mashed up words, append keywords. You know, that's ways to think of like 2-word combinations. Yeah, I don't know, random names. Some of these might be just the kind of made up words. I don't think any of these are kind of real words. This a lot of times is kind of a rabbit hole for people. You know, they start thinking of something, they want really the perfect brand name. It is kind of fun to do. I do think it's worth spending a certain amount of time on, but I don't want you to get stuck on this. You never want to not launch a product because you couldn't think of just the perfect brand name, okay? So spend a little bit of time on it. If it's exciting, feel free to, you know, spend your time on it, but don't get too into the weeds, or don't get stuck where there's just weeks and weeks on end where this is what you're getting hung up on. You don't want that to be the case. Do remember that you want it to not already be a trademarked brand name, because that's important. And that's pretty much all there is to it when it comes to this branding stuff. So good luck, have some fun, and let us know in the Facebook group what brand name you choose. Thanks, guys.